Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Carrie and Dani. Carrie, I think, is feeling a little under the weather today, so I ask you guys to be a little bit patient with her.
Yep.
But I think I'm still going to ask her to talk.
No, that's absolutely fine. I honestly feel fine. Around here in the Midwest, it is cold and flu season. Something got me this weekend and it's just this lingering raspy cough thing. So occasionally I'll have to mute and take a pause, but I'm sure Dani will have something to say to fill in the gaps. So that's no problem. But anyway, when I was trying to brainstorming about what we wanted to talk about today, I was sitting in my office and just kind of looking around, and um, I was thinking about the Bible story that for me kind of started to crack open a little bit about the inspiration of Ellen White and started to show me some of the inconsistencies. And it is just the story of Eve and the apple.
Oh,
So
because I had no idea which story you were going to talk about.
yeah. So this is all everybody. Dani had does not know what we're talking about today. So I just made it just a very quick little grabbed a couple of resources and we're just going to have a conversation. So tell me, Dani, what is your recollection as a kid? What happened?
Hmm.
Why did Eve eat the apple? And how did her and Adam interact during that instance and after?
Okay, so I remember I was trying to think, reading the Bible stories, and as a kid, basically I was told that Eve was not very well behaved and that she wandered away from her husband. And because she wandered away from Adam, she was then at risk of being, tempted, not being the strong one and all. And then the snake come and talked to her. But if she'd been with Adam, he might have been able to tell her not to listen to the snake. And she let the snake convince her to eat the apple when she shouldn't. And then she went back and she not only sinned herself, but she talked Adam into sinning.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea I had actually absorbed so much negativity about women from this story. Funny until you asked me again as an adult, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, did I really? That's exactly, yeah, she talked Adam into sinning as well. And then he ate the apple because the woman convinced him and ruined the world for all of the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, that is what I believed. So I got out my clear word
Oh, I don't
Bible.
have one of those.
Okay. And I hadn't read this. So literally this was like 15 minutes before we sat down to have this conversation. I'm like, hey, we're gonna talk about this. So I pulled out my clear word and I'm just gonna read what the clear word says, and then we're gonna
Yes.
get out the New Revised Standard Updated Edition, which is one of the latest translations of the Bible that is very highly recommended by theologians and scholars across denominations, across Catholicism, Judaism, Christianity, all across the board. Okay, so now we're in Genesis chapter 3, and I'm going to read from the clear word. It says, of all the animals, the flying serpent was the most beautiful and intelligent that God had made. One day, Satan used the serpent to speak to Eve. When she came close to the forbidden tree, the serpent said, didn't God restrict your freedom by not letting you eat from any tree you wanted? Eve was startled, but instead of fleeing to Adam's side, she answered, God didn't restrict our freedom. We can eat of any tree in the garden that we want to, except this one which is in the middle. God asks us not to eat of it or even touch it, or we will die for sure. Satan, through the serpent, said, that's a lie. You won't die. The reason God told you that is because he knows that there is a supernatural power in this tree. And as soon as you eat its fruit, you will be as intelligent as he is, and you will be able to decide for yourself what is good and evil. Now, verse 6. The woman saw how good the fruit looked as the serpent ate it. Suddenly, she felt a strong urge to eat it too. She plucked the fruit, took a bite, and instantly felt a new surge of energy. Excited, she took more fruit and ran to find her husband. When Adam saw her, he knew what she had done and also what the consequences would be. But in the blush of her excitement, she looked more beautiful than ever. He couldn't bear the thought of living without her, so he quickly took the fruit and ate it also. As soon as he did, their eyes were opened to what they had done. The light of God's presence disappeared, and they stood there naked. For the first time, they felt shame. They quickly took fig leaves and made coverings for themselves. So that's ending at verse 7. So does all of that come into what you were taught as growing up as a little Seventh Day
I
Adventist kiddo
I've
about the
never heard
story?
any of that.
So this
No.
this was the clear word. So I do have, I'm not going to read it, but if anybody's interested, Patriarchs and Prophets. If you don't have a copy at home, I couldn't find one right away anymore because we have gleaned a lot of our library out of the house.
Oh, it's
Available
online. You can just go
online.
to the Ellen White. It's online. If you go to the
Yep.
Ellen White estate and put it in, they'll
Yep.
bring it up for you.
So read, it's chapter 3, the temptation and the fall. So a lot of what Jack Blanco pulled and put into the clear word comes from Ellen White. So remember when Jack Blanco wrote this, it was more of a devotional, but then it become published, and Adventists are using this and reading this as part of their. So we're going to set the clear word aside, and I'm going to
Mm.
pick up our the New Revised Standard, and it's much shorter, funnily enough, as to
I actually have never seen the clear word or heard of it. It's not something that was popular over here.
so the Clear Word Bible. I know that there's a few videos. Academy Apologia did a couple of videos on it. So it was, they didn't use it much down there at all. You haven't seen it?
Not not that I recall, no.
Okay. So here in the US, I think probably around Andrews as well, because Jack Blanco, or no, was he down at Southern? He was a professor in one of the theology departments, and it's been published as a Bible.
Okay. And so he's
So
taken
you
it
can
from
find
patriarch
it
to book.
at probably online through on the Adventist book centers. When you go to the Adventist book centers, it's in with all the other Bibles. It's not as a devotional. So he pulls a lot of Ellen White's ideas and puts them in to the Bible. And a lot of Adventists, this is one of the only Bibles that they pick up and read. And it's a paraphrase. It's not a translation. So I'm gonna pull up. Here's what um Genesis 3, starting in verse 1. We're gonna read all the way to 7. Um, Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord had made. He said to the woman, "Did God say you shall not eat from any tree in the garden?" One, he never says that the devil speaking through the serpent. It just says the serpent.
Mm.
I'm not saying that it's not the devil, but um, let's see. The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and then it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate.
Wow, that's
Then
really
the
different.
eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. He was with her.
Wow, that's so different to what we were taught as kids when they said that, the problem she wandered away from the protection of her husband and that's why she sinned.
Yeah, because as women, we're too stupid to be trusted on our own.
My brain is going like 100 miles an hour at the moment because, yeah, I've been reading stuff about purity culture lately, which is also not biblical, and that's what it teaches too.
Yeah, yeah,
The
and
whole, you've got to be
it's
protected.
interesting
There's the
because
umbrella. And Goddard, that Bill at the church, one of the Adventist churches I went to had a lot of people that had been to Bill Goddard seminars, and they were all running around saying about the whole little umbrella of protection. And I can remember being told, I can remember I had some visitations from spirits, and it was really scary. And I would have been about 21 at the time.
mhm,
It was absolutely terrifying. And I can remember talking to people at church, and they said to me, "Oh, it's because you don't live at home with your family, so you're not under your father's umbrella of spiritual protection, and you're not married, so you don't have a husband to spiritually protect you. So technically, you now come under the spiritual protection of the elders, at the church, and you really haven't been doing what you're told or the right things,
Mm, yeah.
which was not actually at all helpful.
No.
But
No.
it fits in. I was just thinking about how I'd never thought about how those stories directly connected to the whole Adam and Eve thing that you're talking about, and it's
Well, and
it's used to fuel it.
and I've got this so we have, of course, you've got the big Bible story. And I think
I
sometime, I have this
Yeah.
series and I did read what was in there, and that definitely reflects what is in Ellen White in chapter 3 of Patriarchs and Prophets. It's in there. Also what's in the Clear Word. Um so I found this at our local Goodwill, and so it's just a Bible storybook. It's printed by the Church of God, Anderson, Indiana, which is where we live. It's so the Church of God has, there's so many different denominations. One of them is literally called the Church of God, Anderson, Indiana.
Okay.
Side little side rabbit trail. When my daughter was out in Washington State last year, we were driving through this little bitty town up near the Canadian border, and there was a little church, which was this town's Church of God, Anderson, Indiana, in Washington State. Because there's the
Wow,
Church
there
of
you
God,
go.
and then there's the Church of God, Anderson, Indiana. Anyway, so this is published. And I found this at Goodwill, and I thought I'd grab it. Um, and it
Well,
it basically, um, let me see.
I'm excited to hear what they say. I've never read kids' Bible stories from any other religion other than the one I
I
grew
know,
up
and so I read that and I was looking at that. So this is Genesis. This covers, it says Genesis 2 verse 8, verse through 3 to 24. So I'm not gonna read all of it, but I'm gonna read the pertinent section that talks about. So one day this the serpent asked Eve. It doesn't say who the serpent is, just as the serpent asked Eve, will now let me go ahead and I'll just read the whole little startup. It says Adam and
Yeah.
Eve were very happy in their garden home. God had given them good things to enjoy, and they knew nothing about evil and wrongdoing. God walked and talked with them in the cool evenings. In this garden, God planted a wonderful tree called the tree of life. Whoever ate the fruit of this tree would live forever. Another tree was called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God said, you may eat of the fruit of every tree in the garden, except from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you eat of this tree, you shall surely die. One day the serpent asked Eve, will God let you eat the fruit of every tree in this garden? We may eat of every tree except one, Eve answered. God told us not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, lest we die. You will not die, the serpent replied. God knows if you eat fruit from this tree, you will become as wise as God to know good and evil. That's why he forbade you to eat it. Eve looked at the fruit. It would looked at the fruit. If it would really make her wise like God, she wanted to taste it. Reaching out her hand, she picked the fruit and ate it and gave some to Adam. He too ate the fruit. At once, Adam and Eve knew they had obeyed God. Fear filled their hearts. How afraid they were to meet God. They had never been afraid before. Now they tried to find a hiding place among the beautiful trees in the garden. Their hearts had become wicked. And so it doesn't say specifically, but it doesn't say she wandered away and just that she gave some to Adam. So, I mean, the
Well, it
Bible
makes it,
says he was with her.
yeah, well, that makes it sound like he was with her because it said she plucked it and gave it to him.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Wow.
and it just makes me wonder how many other basic Bible stories have we embellished, and I read, and absolutely zero hate to your story hour. Did you ever listen to those when you were a kid? Uncle Dan and Aunt
Yes.
Sue. I
Yes.
loved those. I listened to them every Friday. So they were broadcast on the FM radio Friday night and Saturday morning here because we were so close to Andrews. We got them on the radio. And I love them, listen to them and everything. But now looking at it, a lot of their embellished Bible stories were part of a lot of their ideas they did get from the writings of Ellen White. So it's just interesting because I'm looking at, I'm going to share my screen just so you guys can see what I'm seeing. Let me get. Okay, are you seeing that now?
Not yet. No. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is So chapter 3. Um, so it says here, it says, our first parents were not left without a warning of danger. Heavenly messengers opened to them the history of Satan's fall and his plots for their destruction, unfolding fully the nature of the divine government in which the prince of evil was trying to overthrow. It was by disobedience to the just commands of God that Satan and his hosts had fallen. However important then that Adam and Eve should honor the law by which alone it was impossible for order and equity to be maintained. The law of God is as sacred as God himself, the revelation of his will. She keeps going. But down here it says the angels warned them to be on their guard against the devices of Satan, for his efforts to ensnare them would be unwearied. So that makes it even worse. That in Ellen White's things is that basically they Eve did that with the full knowledge of what was going to happen and how horrible it would be. I don't believe that there is anything in the Bible to show that she really, really, truly knew
No.
exactly what was going on. Um, am I ever going to understand exactly why the fall happened? I don't, but this makes it seem like it was such a willful disobedience, not just simple trickery on the part of the serpent. That angels were sitting down and telling her exactly what's going to happen, blah, 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 and then in one fell swoop, the serpent comes in and tells her, no, that's not right. And it also says here that the serpent was one of the wisest and most beautiful. It had wings and it flew. I I don't
I
know
was
that
always taught that.
I was always taught that, but I don't believe that's anywhere. I'm sure somebody's going to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but that's not. I mean, there's nothing in what I read earlier to show that they just said he was a serpent. It said he'll crawl on the ground, so maybe from a contrast to say that now that you can't be, but it doesn't specifically say there was wings and then they took their wings away, but it does say the serpent and all of its kind will crawl on the ground afterwards. But there's so much embellished and added that doesn't. I think it is interesting to maybe use your imagination a little bit when you're relaying Bible stories, you know, to embellish. But I think to change the actual
I'm,
message of the story. I don't know.
I've never, I mean, I'm astounded at the moment when I think about it. I'm realizing again, I mean, I've realized this before, but I'm having another moment where I realize again how much, as a kid, because I was too young to ask questions or think, I just swallowed the stories whole and believed them.
Mhm.
And now I'm thinking about dinosaurs. Okay. Think about dinosaurs. I tell you why, because I'm thinking, think about some of those ginormous big pythons that are ridiculously long. How big a set of wings would it take to get one of those in the air? I mean, there's not even stories and legends of dinosaurs that look like that
Uh-huh.
flying.
Yeah.
I just, I mean, I grew up in Australia. There were a lot of snakes at times. Um, yeah, no. But I'd never thought about it like that. I just accepted that it was a pretty snake, sparkly, rainbow colors with wings, and Eve was awful.
Yeah. Well, and in the Bible story book, I've just opened it up and looking and it basically so they call it the one mistake. Said it happened this way. One day Eve went for a walk by herself in the garden. She wanted to take another look at the two wonderful trees in the center of it with all their beautiful, brightly colored fruit. Why, she wondered, had God given each of them a peculiar name? The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and what was good and what was evil, and why mustn't she eat its fruit? What could possibly do her harm? It seemed strange that God, after giving so much, should not give all. Why should he hold back one tree? But Eve had no thought of disobeying him, not then. No doubt she would no doubt she told herself that he would explain it all someday, and there was probably a good reason. And then that's when, so then she turned away, perhaps to look again at the lovely tree of life, and she was startled to hear someone speaking to her. Who could it be? The only voices she had ever heard up till now, but the voices of God and the voice of Adam. Now that's interesting though, because Ellen White said that the angels had been talking to them, but this says nobody else had talked. So
Yeah.
maybe not
Um,
quite.
the part of the story so far that you've read that's really jumped out at me, because we had those books. They were like our little Bibles as kids. I remember reading those stories to my younger brothers.
Oh yeah, yeah. I read
And
them all the time.
as far, I'm just thinking, even, goodness me, even, oh, 9, 10 years back, I went through a phase where I found some at the what you guys call it, the thrift store.
Yep,
No, we call it the op shop, the op shop, the opportunity shop.
yep,
I can remember finding 9 or 10 sets of those books and or single volumes of them over quite a few years, and I would always buy them.
yep.
I would buy them and I'd take them to church and I'd give them to people that couldn't afford stories for their kids. And
Yeah.
I didn't reread them at that stage. I was just so excited to find them and pass them on. But something that really hit me out of what you read is something that I believe. You'll have to read the exact words out again. There's a piece in the middle there, Carrie, where you said Eve wondered why an all-giving, is it, or an all-loving God would hold something back from them, was the
Um,
basis of it. Can you read out how that was phrased again? Because that is just,
it seems strange that God, after giving so much, would not give all. Why would he hold back one tree? But Eve had no thought of disobeying him, not then. No doubt she told herself that he would explain it all someday. There was probably a good reason. As she turned away, perhaps to look again at the lovely tree of life, she was startled to hear someone speaking to her. Who could it be? The only voices, and now someone else was speaking. Astonished, she looked this way and that, and oh, nobody. Then she noticed the voice was coming from a serpent. How remarkable! An animal that could talk. She waited to see if it would speak again. It did, and its voice was so friendly and pleasing that any fears she may have had disappeared. After all, it was rather nice to talk to someone to talk to, even though it was only a serpent. Who was this serpent, and why was it able to talk? The Bible tells us that the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, that it was the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, first known as Lucifer, the light bearer. He was once the leader of the angels in heaven. I have to look up to see where exactly does the Bible say that this serpent was. I mean, I'm not saying it's not, like, because that totally makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah. So I know this is not the part of the story that you were,
yeah.
heading for when you were talking about things, but as an adult, there came a point where I started to, as I was leaving the Adventist church, part of the struggle was to do with how I viewed God.
Mm-hmm.
And it was different to my friends that have grown up in other churches. They
Mm-hmm.
had a much nicer picture of God than what I had. And I'd never crossed my mind until right now when you read that maybe some of the way I viewed God was because of, though, that was the Bible stories we were read as kids. And in that
Mm-hmm.
Bible story, we were taught exactly what it says in there, that God created something beautiful, and even though he was all loving, he held something back from you. And like, why would he? It's just like really unfair. Here's the good stuff, I'm keeping it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna flaunt it type thing. And I wouldn't, if you'd asked me anywhere through my life, did I see God like that? I'd have said absolutely not. God is so not like that. But it's always still been there in the back of my mind. And I never understood where I got some of my other Christian friends thought were slightly odd or negative ideas about God. But when you read those Bible stories like that, I'm thinking, yeah, yeah, that's where it came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, to me, this was just kind of the start of a journey of going, there's a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of extra biblical stuff that's been out there. And am I saying that everything Ellen White wrote and did was wrong? No, because I mean, she did say some really good things that were
Mm,
useful and helpful, but mixed into there's a lot of stuff that can be damaging. A lot of stuff we now know was plagiarized, and borrowed, and this was stuff that, I mean, even if you argue that literary borrowing, or let's call it what it is, plagiarism, was common during that time, um it's still wrong, especially when you say God told me or I saw, and then come to find out you're just using other knowledge that you got, and so that's deceitful in my mind. So anyway, that was that one Bible story, and I'm curious to see to go through. I think one thing I'd like to do is just sit down with the Bible story and read the stories and read along in the Bible as it goes, and just to see where there might be deviations. Um, you know,
Mm.
but
Um, I just want to highlight that even though those deviations may seem small, like I said, that little bit, the deviation about in there and how it impacts even as an adult, because the things you learn as a child are the foundation that you build a lot of you unconsciously, you don't always realize it, but you build a lot of your adult beliefs on top of.
mhm.
And what might seem like a tiny deviation, the easiest way to explain that, of course, is the most commonly used one. So sorry to be boring and not inventive, but if you're flying a plane or you're in a boat and you're 1 degree off course, it doesn't matter a whole lot in the first 10 minutes, but 3 weeks down the track, you're going to be hundreds and hundreds of miles from where you intended to land. So I believe that even those small deviations are important.
Well, and I think too, it's also a matter of trust. And that was one thing that really bothered me, when I read the psychobiography, this one. Uh,
Yeah.
and then there's all the other ones too. And I have a lot of the other ones I haven't sat down and read. I've started them but haven't finished them because that one was enough nails in the coffin for me. But that was to me was I just felt betrayed. Like my trust, I had given this church my trust for so long. And now it's just like, okay, what can I trust? So I'm gonna have to just build it all up on my own, from other sources and figure things out. But anyway, it's just so that betrayed trust, and that's one thing, and somebody had sent us a letter about, and he just said, oh, forgive the church and come back. Like, no, it's not a matter of forgiving the church.
No.
It's There's a lot of trust that's been broken from an organizational standpoint and also a doctrinal standpoint. So anyway, that's what I had to share today, and that's what I had to talk about. And I'm
Wow.
glad it's something that you hadn't seen before, so we could really talk about it. I could see your reaction. So,
I'm a little bit astounded. And I'm really looking forward to hearing. Please leave in the comments down below. Let us know. Um, is this something that you'd realized? Did you know about it? What if there's a Bible story in particular and the Bible stories you were told as a kid were different to what you knows in the Bible? Drop us a note below and we will look it up and read it too. Would love to hear the
mhm,
inconsistencies that have really stood out to you.
yeah, I mean, it's always fun to have a conversation about the different things that we're separately encountering, and come together and chat about it and learn a little bit more, and push us to learn and discuss things. Hmm.
I'm I know it's not initially you were talking about the breakinness of the trust and embellishing the Bible and adding details.
Hmm.
But the thing that's still just I guess the thing that's really still standing out in my mind is that that story told as Ellen White told it, and that Eve left her husband, and that's what left her
Hmm.
open to sin, and that's what left her open to being
Hmm. Yep, you've frozen, Dani.
tempted, which is not
There you
biblically
go.
true because you read it from the Bible.
Yeah.
Um, it's been used. It's been used to impact women's lives. It's been used to impact my life as well. Um,
Hmm.
it's it's connected so strongly and interwoven into purity culture and women being treated not actually fully equal. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, yeah, but God gave women, men and women gender roles and stuff." And I'm quite happy if you want to say that, but there was still an equality of value even in different roles.
Yes.
And these stories don't even aren't even saying we're all equally valuable, but this is what you're good at and this is what you're good at. This is saying, and I was always taught that if Eve had done the right thing and stuck with her husband, she wouldn't have sinned and the world wouldn't be ruined.
Right.
And it wasn't put that clearly. It wasn't said in exactly those words, but
No, but it was certainly implied.
it was said pretty. We didn't miss the point.
And that's why we had to um, give birth with pain and deal with all of the other curses of womanhood was because Eve ate that stupid apple
Yeah.
or whatever kind of
Um,
fruit it was.
but people believing that if women just stuck with their men and did what they were told, and that men have more rights over things than women, and all those things. I mean, this is only one of the Bible stories that is used to underpin the whole the purity
Patriarchy
culture and the
and
man is the
yeah,
head of the house story. So
yeah.
this is only like one of the stories that's used. But I to talk about it like this as a theory doesn't give the full power and impact of how, at a ground level, it can ruin people's lives.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. So if people have stories as to how, when this is taken to its nth degree, it's impacted and ruined your life, let us know. And come on and talk to us. You saw Jane come on. She's still alive. We weren't scary. Um, come,
She even said she'd be
come
willing
tell
to
us your
do it again
story.
at some point. So,
She did. So yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Carrie, about all of this?
no, I think this one was kind of the start, and I'll see if I can come up with a couple other ones that we can talk about. But I think this is just a good start for people who are um looking in, maybe looking into the inspiration of Ellen White and exactly how does that mesh with the Bible. And this is one of the first stories in the Bible that we already see some inconsistencies and a little bit of betrayal of the trust that the church and so many people have put into her writing. So if anybody has anything to add, like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, we'll see you again next time with another conversation with Carrie and Dani. Thanks, Al. Bye bye.